And lo shall it be known that those designated trans shall be smote with dysphoria, feeling that their body is not their own, and that it must be altered at all cost, lest they suffer from this plight. So saith the Lord. Hi there, my name's Vera. I'm trans. I don't have dysphoria. So before I get any further into this, happy Pride. Yeah, this might seem like an odd month to talk about this, except that this was just kind of going to be the next video I was going to get around to doing. That would be ready to go, and I definitely wanted to have something out this month. But yeah, I don't have gender dysphoria, but I'm also trans, which is something that doesn't compute for a lot of people, and honestly didn't for me for a little while. Now, before I get too far into sort of explaining myself, I should clarify a few basically terms. Define your terms. So when I say I'm trans, most people, for someone looking the way that I presently look in this video, would take that to mean that I am a trans woman, meaning somebody assigned male at birth who wishes to live a full-time life as a woman. That is not me. I am gender fluid. My sense of self doesn't stay put. It's, I was assigned male at birth. Sometimes my sense of self wanders in a decidedly feminine direction. Sometimes it goes more masculine. Sometimes it hangs out in the middle. Sometimes it just kind of shifts around even, within the same day. So that is how I identify. Gender fluid does still fall under the trans umbrella, especially for me at this point, because while I may not be transitioning into something that is fixed, i.e. going to live full-time as a woman and being a trans woman, which again, I don't claim to be, I have absolutely transitioned out of life as a cisgender male, which is what I was, or at least what I identified as, for quite some time. And for a long time I was very reluctant, even knowing that it had use as an umbrella term, to refer to myself as trans. Not because I thought there was anything wrong with being trans, but to not step on toes, out of fear that people would say, no, you're not, you can't say that. But additionally, a misunderstanding myself of what it means to be trans, because for a very long time I had it in my head and I had assumed that dysphoria is like a staple, possibly even the determining factor of being trans, as opposed to being gender fluid or being a cross-dresser or being androgynous or whatever else. Now, dysphoria is the sensation, dysphoria about your sense of gender can also be linked to body dysmorphia, which is that there's something about you, and in the case of a trans person who's suffering from dysphoria, something about your body and your sense of self that you look at that or you sense that, and it is distinctly at odds with your gender identity. And that can cause a lot of issues. It can cause a lot of self-esteem and personal image issues. It can factor into depression. It's not a fun thing to have to deal with. And I've never had it. And even now, like, I still don't. And at this point, I've got, by most people's standards, I've got a weird body at this point, because I'm on testosterone blockers. I'm not on estrogen, but despite not being on estrogen, I still have, I've developed a bust. These girls, they're mine. But I never look at them and think they look wrong, nor do I ever look at my intact masculine genitals and feel that those look wrong either. This is all me. And I never wanted to call myself trans for a long time because I thought, well, I can't be. I don't have dysphoria about my body. Usually specifically thinking about my genitals. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to get rid of that. I love it. But I did have it in my head. To be trans was to have dysphoria about your secondary or primary sex characteristics. And because I didn't have that, well, I'm not trans. And I am trans. But the way in which I'm trans doesn't fit the narrative. And when I say the narrative, I don't just mean the narrative of people, of cisgender people looking, from the outside looking in. Even the trans narrative that the trans community tends to favor, I don't fit that. And dysphoria is very often a part of that narrative because for most trans people, trans men or trans women, who make use of surgery, so whether it be breast implants, whether it be sexual reassignment surgery, in the case of trans men, whether it be top surgery, or, you don't even have to be a trans man or trans woman. There are, I know, non-binary women. Well, I say non-binary, assigned female at birth individuals who are not trans men, but they've still had top surgery because they still had dysphoria about their chest. And that is very much a part of the trans narrative because it is tied to some of the steps that many trans people take. That you engage in these surgical alterations to combat dysphoria. And I am not negating that. I'm not saying that that isn't the case, because it absolutely is. But because that is the primary trans narrative that is out there, I feel like the idea of being trans without dysphoria is either unacknowledged or possibly not understood, or just possibly it doesn't occur to people. So, like, for myself, most people, when they think of trans people, the idea that they have, and this is true of many trans people, but the idea that they have is that somebody has, for a very long time, probably from a very young age, known that they are not the gender they were assigned at birth. Whether it's a woman realizing that they are a man realizing they're a woman, or either or realizing that they are some other option, some form of non-binary. That the narrative is that they were always that, and they are now taking the steps to make their body match who they've always known they were. That's not me. That's not all trans people. It's probably a majority, but it's not all trans people. Even if I, hypothetically, were to start to live full-time as a woman, I wouldn't feel a disconnect to the fact that I grew up as a boy. My childhood was as a boy. I have a kid. I'm her father. Even if I were to become a woman, which again, I don't think is in the cards for me, but even if I did, I'd still be her father. And that's not me saying anyone who does this is still these things. This is me. I am only talking about me here. Because for me, I don't know if this sentence is going to make any sense. I'm not trans by nature, I'm trans by evolution. And what I mean by that is, I can look back at my life and I don't think that I was always what you see now. I probably at about puberty, I started having a sense of a feminine side to myself, but it was never so clearly defined as being like, this is what I should be. And it wasn't constant. It was sporadic. And I've said in the past, I was what I was meant to be at the time. I couldn't be what I am right now. I couldn't have been this at some earlier point in my life. I couldn't have been this 5 years ago. And I wouldn't have even dreamed of a life like I now have 10 years ago. I would not have been ready to live like this. Because this is not like, this is the me that has always been suddenly free. No, I've grown into this. And I may continue to grow into something else. I don't know. But what I am now is on the shoulders of everything that I was before, including being a boy and a man. And whatever I become in the future is on the shoulders of that and of this. And through that evolution, I have been unbelievably fortunate to be able to look in the mirror. I'm not going to say be completely happy. I've got love handles I would love to get rid of. They drive me crazy. But I don't look at the fundamental characteristics of my body and see something wrong. And I'm very lucky for that. I know that, again, do not for even an instant think that my saying I don't have dysphoria means that dysphoria isn't real. Dysphoria is incredibly real for many trans people. But I worry about people who are trans who are either not able to make that leap themselves or have others telling them, no, you're not, because they don't have dysphoria. Because you can still be trans without it. Just like for the majority of the human population, gender and physical sex are the same thing and are intrinsically linked, whereas with trans people, our sense of gender is not intrinsically tied to the sex we were born into. Much in that same way, being trans and having dysphoria are statistically very frequently linked to the point that one could almost be forgiven for assuming they're synonymous. But that's not the universal truth. I don't necessarily know what I hope to accomplish by talking about this in this video. It's just that there are things about my life and my trans journey that I don't see talked about. And maybe that's because I am a 1 in a billion freak and there's nobody else like this. I don't know. But I think there's at least a possibility that there are others like me, or there would be if they could hear some reassurance that they aren't a 1 in a billion. That there is someone else like them. Again, I don't know if that's true, but maybe. And sometimes maybe is enough. Hope is a drug, and I am an addict. So there you go. Happy Pride Month to the trans people who do suffer from dysphoria. My heart goes out to you in whatever steps you need to take to, in the most healthy way possible, deal with that and reduce it. I hope you are able and have the ability and the means and the support system to address that. And if you don't have it now, I hope you find it. And if you're like me, well, then you're not alone. So that'll be it for this one, folks. I don't know how regularly I'll get videos out on this channel. I really wanted to get them out once a month. I didn't get one out last month, but this channel's not ever going to die, because this side of me doesn't go away, and it never will. Whether it will become more prominent, less prominent, the look will change, who knows? I'm not done evolving. I don't know if I ever will be. But I like to stop in and let people know little bits of my journey. Thank you for listening, and please just remember, you are beautiful, you are valid, you are loved. Happy Pride.